So my presentation today, I will cover, what BAM is. I'm sure most of you, you've all heard about it now because it was mentioned a couple times today. But I'll tell you what exactly BAM is. I'll provide a summary of a selection of some of our work, not all of it because it's just the breadth and depth is pretty extensive. And then I will be sure to touch on our upcoming forest management related work. And I won't review our available products, but I will remind you that where you can find a list of our available data products. So first and foremost, our BAM team is summarized here. All of the work I'm presenting today is actually not work done by me. Mark already presented the work that I'm doing. So we are a research group where 3 academics and a government scientist represent our steering committee, and then we've got 4 project staff, some postdocs, contributing scientists who work for other organizations but spend some of their time working on BAM-related projects. And then I've got a note there that we're adding 2 new postdocs and 4 new PhD students as part of this forest management-related work I mentioned. So BAM was created over 10 years ago. It was conceptualized in 2004, and it was established to address critical knowledge gaps regarding management and conservation of boreal birds. So, it's this huge area, it's under-surveyed, we don't have that much data, we don't have that much information. How do we conserve these species? How do we manage these species? So BAM was created in recognition of the fact that we can probably build models that will shed some light on this challenge. And so with the help of numerous funding partners and many, many, many data partners, both individuals and institutions, BAM has taken off, and here we are over 10 years later. And so our goals are multifold. We assemble data. We don't collect. BAM individuals collect their data, but BAM as a group does not go out and collect new data. We assemble data from other people, point count data, and also we're starting to collect ARU data as well. We develop or refine modeling approaches to provide information to understand effects of disturbance and other stressors on birds, and then ultimately to contribute to conservation and management of these species in the boreal. And summarizing this more effectively in a pictorial representation, we really, the ultimate goal is to inform conservation and management of boreal birds. And we do this by providing the best available information in the form of data products, and then also this foundational research that will inform the conservation conversation. So the best ways of managing and conserving species. I will touch on a few of these areas where our research takes place, but first I will talk about our data set. And so, like I mentioned, we don't collect the data ourselves. We receive data from across Canada. We're a national project. Actually, we're international because we do now collect data from Alaska as well. And it includes the breeding bird survey, the breeding bird atlases, and then many, many, many individual point counts from individual and institutions that have contributed their point count data to our database. And so thank you again for all of that. There's plenty of you in this room, I'm sure. We also, you've already seen this slide, thank you, Mark, but we have a large set of environmental data sets as well that we use in our modeling. To talk very quickly about our methods, we are interested in correcting for biases associated with surveys, when you're out in the field, and then as a result of that, how to integrate all these data from different data sets, and then we are developing modeling approaches that are best suited for whatever question we're trying to address. And so I will only talk about our data integration because I think it's the most relevant for this group. You've also seen this slide. But the idea is that we know that point count surveys from different individuals, different organizations, they're going to differ in the sampling radius, in the duration, in the habitat that they take place in. We also know that individual bird species differ in their availability, so how often they sing, and also their perceptibility, so that just the characteristics of their songs. How well can you hear them if they are singing? And so Peter, who is in the back of the room, has developed a statistical approach that allows us to correct for all of these different biases and combine these data sets from all over Canada and Alaska into one model that allows us to get at density, not just an index of bird abundance, but real density of singing males. And we're also working on other corrections, which I won't get into, such as how to deal with roadside surveys. I'm going to talk a little bit about our density models, which is, one of our main goals recently, our main efforts has been creating data products that can be used. And one of these sort of key products is these national density maps. So the idea being that you can go online and download a raster spatial data set of the density of singing males per hectare in Canada. And we've explored a few different methods. We've come at this question from a few different angles, and our latest set of models is nearing completion. But we also have our previous set available online as well. And then as a result of these maps, we're also getting population estimates, both nationally within Canada, but also provincially or at whatever scale you're interested in. I will talk a little bit more about our ecological knowledge questions, because this is where we're trying to understand species to inform how we manage. Really the kind of information that underlie our management and conservation decisions. So Diana Stralberg has done a lot of work on forecasting impacts of climate change on birds. And she is now working on applications of these results in land use planning initiatives and conservation prioritization efforts. She and others have also are actively looking at the contribution of wintering ground factors to breeding bird abundance. So that's a complicating factor whenever we're talking about conservation of birds that travel tons of kilometers down to the tropics, where we don't have any control over what happens on their habitat. Focusing again in on this area of impacts of land use change. We do have a large national scope questions. We're starting to look at questions about natural disturbance, but really we are focusing in on anthropogenic forest change. And we've recently completed, one of our postdocs has completed some work at national extent looking at quantifying the impacts of forest change on boreal bird density, and specifically he focused on 16 old forest species. And he found that there are negative population impacts on densities of these old forest species, and that these negative effects depended on whether you were talking about local scale or neighborhood scale effects, and also the sector, so the type of the nature of the disturbance. And that work is currently being reviewed internally within BAM. I will touch very briefly on our regional work, which is focused on about Alberta oil sands. This work's been done by Aaron Bain and another one of our postdocs, where they looked at quantifying, again, sort of impacts of human activities on boreal bird density, and old forest species decreased in abundance with energy sector activities, and also it varied with the type of activities. They looked also at scaling up. Everyone wants to know validity whenever you build models, how accurate are these models? And so they looked at how, if we build these models at local scales, can we scale them up and start getting at landscape scale questions? And the answer to that question, turns out, is it depends. and that work is in review right now. Now to focus in on the forest management work I mentioned. Go back for a second. I'm not talking about the risk matrix because Mark already talked about that. I will be talking very briefly about harvest strategies and our scenario and forecasting work. So when I talk about harvest strategies, I mean, our goal is to understand how does bird density, and when I say bird density, I really mean species density, because we've historically focused on individual species focused, and how does bird density vary as a function of forest structure, whether that's landscape scale, the spatial configuration of the forest, age structure, species composition, whatever type of structure you're talking about, and then also management strategies. And so Erin's going to have a PhD student looking at within forest strategy impacts. And then we've also been involved in some work with the Calling Lake fragmentation study, looking at impacts on birds through that as well. And then the next step, after quantifying those relationships, is what are the implications of these effects? So can we come up with scenarios of theoretical or probable management strategies, management plans, and forecast into the future? What are the population consequences on species over short-term, long-term, whatever scale you're talking about? And how can we come up with plans that maximize bird conservation? And that work a lot of that work will be done through an NSERC strategic partnership grant with Steve Cumming at Laval University in Quebec. I will very quickly talk about our critical habitat work, and so Samantha alluded to this briefly in her talk. BAM is involved in providing science to inform the identification of critical habitat for olive-sided flycatcher, Canada warbler, and common nighthawk. And to date, what we've done is create these national models that I mentioned. So our most recent update of national models has been driven in part by this effort. And what I've got here is a map of the first round of this set of models. And there was a question earlier about, or a point made really about, what do we do when the models say the species here but we know it's not? And that's what happened with this first set of models, is the models were over-predicting above the known northern range. And so as a result of that feedback, we modified the models. And we recognize a model is a hypothesis, but you can update it with information, whether that is actual, additional new point count data, or whether it's expert information to inform the way that we model. And in that case, that's what we did for this one. And our revised model, apologies for the difference in color scheme. Like I said, this is still a work in progress, but it is, we've overlaid the products, and the newer model is doing a much better job of that northern range limit for Canada warbler. And so that's what we've done to date. Our next steps is we're bringing on a postdoc to really focus on the work identified as part of the schedule of studies to identify critical habitat, and the hiring for that is underway, and we want to get him or her off to a running start to really get looped into that project and understand how to get at questions of critical habitat identification for these species that are wide-ranging. Most of them live across much of the Boreal, and some of the questions we've decided, or we've been tagged with handling, is we have these national models. We also have regional models of species density. How do those models compare? That's a form of validation. Can we validate with other data sets that are not in the BAM data set? So we have eBird data, for example. How do they compare? One of our big challenges is, how do we address carrying capacity? So, we want to identify areas not just where the birds are high abundance, but also where they're consistently high abundance across time. So we're going to have to do what we can with that question. And just a couple other example questions there. And then one of the last points here is, informing model-based sampling recommendations. So where do we want more data to most improve our models? And this would also get at that question of validating models and also helping to delineate ranges. So yes, more data is always a good thing for modeling, but more data in very specific locations is even better. So if we can specify where those data should be collected, and then get other people to collect the data for us, then the models can be improved. So very, very quickly touching on exactly that topic, we're looking at the current representation that our current data set has of the Boreal region. So, and this is again a way at looking at validity of our models and how much we trust them. So if our current data set, which like I said is stitched together from many, many different data sets, if it's doing a really great job of covering the entire Boreal region and the whole range of environmental conditions in the Boreal region, then we have a pretty decent trust in what our models are saying about how many birds are everywhere else that wasn't sampled. If we don't have great coverage, or if there's certain environmental conditions that we're missing bird data for, then we're going to be a little bit more doubtful about those locations. And so that can help us identify where we want more data, is in those regions where we don't have great representation of the Boreal region. The last piece I wanted to talk about is our best available information, so our data products. Currently, this comes in the form of distribution and abundance maps, which are provided as spatial data. We also have image-based files if you simply want to plug an image into a presentation that says, here's where the bird is. Well, we have those ones too. And then also we're working towards population size estimates in the Boreal at various scales, either provincial, BCR, national, and then we're working towards trend estimation, work in progress. And so where can you find these products? Some of them are on our website, which is listed at the bottom of every slide, borealbirds.ca, and then our BAM database and portal, which I did not provide the URL for, but I can do so if you contact me or at the break. And so that's where you get those products from. You can also reach out to me directly or anyone from the BAM team if you happen to know someone and say, hey, I want this information. Do you have a product for that? And we can start that conversation, because not all of our products are available online right now. And as a last note, our annual report comes out annually, but this is the most recent one where there is a summary of the products that are currently available, both available online and through contacting me. And it also has a summary of our recently completed and ongoing work. And like I said, there's one every year. It comes out in April. And that's where you'll get an idea of what we do, and they're all on our website. That's what I have.